Have you ever noticed how the moment you start taking your goals seriously, people suddenly change their tone? When you had no direction, no one cared. But the second you begin moving with focus, when you stop playing small, that's when the criticism starts. And it's never direct. It comes wrapped in jokes, passive remarks, or fake concern. But what if I told you, their sudden criticism has nothing to do with your path, and everything to do with how your progress exposes their excuses? It's like a cracked phone screen, still working, but the damage spreads with every touch. Or think of a shopping cart with one jammed wheel, fine on smooth floors, but the moment you push forward, it pulls against you. That's why people suddenly start criticizing your goals, because your movement exposes the flaws they were hoping no one would notice. Because when people suddenly start criticizing your goals, you have a choice: shrink to fit their comfort or rise in silence. And the moment you stop explaining, their insecurity begins to surface. Your growth becomes a mirror they can't look away from. Suddenly, your success feels like a threat they can't ignore. So how do you handle the people who suddenly criticize your goals? Not with rage, not with revenge, not by chasing, proving, or saying a word. Stay with me, because the last one won't just expose them. It'll remind you why silence always wins. Let's begin. Number 1. Your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Let's talk about one of the strangest things that happens when you start growing. People begin to criticize you. You'd think they'd be proud. You'd think they'd support you. But instead, you hear things like, "You're doing too much," or "Don't get your hopes up," or "Why are you changing so fast?" At first, it's confusing. You're not bragging. You're not hurting anyone. You're just chasing something that matters to you. So why the pushback? Here's the truth. When you chase goals with intensity, it highlights what they're not doing. Your ambition becomes a mirror, and not everyone likes what they see. The moment you start leveling up, some people feel like they're falling behind. It's not because you're trying to make them feel that way. It's because your progress silently calls out their stagnation. And instead of facing that discomfort, they project it onto you. They call you unrealistic. They question your priorities. They downplay your vision. But deep down, it has nothing to do with your goals. It has everything to do with their own regrets. This is where Stoic wisdom steps in. Seneca once said, "The one who envies you sees their own failures in your success. What you're doing reminds them of what they haven't done. Your courage makes their excuses feel weak. Your action exposes their inaction. So rather than deal with those feelings, they try to pull you back down to their level. Because if you keep rising, they can't keep pretending. And that's scary for someone who's been sitting still for too long." Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Ashley, decided to finally pursue her dream of becoming a therapist. She enrolled in night classes, started volunteering, and slowly built her experience. At first, her friends cheered her on, but as she progressed, the tone changed. One friend joked, "Wow, look at you trying to be the next Oprah." And another said, "You really think that degree is going to change your life?" These weren't strangers. These were people she loved, and it stung. But Ashley saw through it. She realized they weren't mocking her dreams, they were mourning their own. Her drive reminded them of everything they'd been too afraid to start. So how do you handle it? First, don't take it personally. Their criticism is a reflection of their inner struggle, not your value. Second, don't shrink to make them comfortable. You weren't meant to dim your light, so others don't feel exposed. And finally, stay focused. Let their doubts fuel your discipline. Let their silence sharpen your clarity. At the end of the day, you can't control how your growth makes others feel, but you can choose to keep growing anyway. Because those who are meant to walk with you won't fear your fire. They'll rise with it. And those who can't, let them stay where they are. You've got a mountain to climb. Number 2, they feel left behind. Let's talk about one of the most common but rarely admitted reasons people start criticizing your goals. They feel like you're leaving them behind. You didn't mean to. You didn't brag. You didn't rub your success in anyone's face. All you did was take your life seriously. You got focused. You made a plan. You stopped wasting time. And that shift, it shook something in them. Your progress threatened their comfort zone. Your discipline exposed their distractions. And instead of rising with you, they pulled away and then started throwing stones. Here's the truth. Your growth forces people to confront their own inaction. When you start moving forward with clarity and intention, people who've been standing still start to panic. They won't always say it out loud, but inside, a question starts to echo. What am I doing with my life? And instead of answering that honestly, they go into defense mode. Criticism becomes their shield, not because they hate you, but because they hate the version of themselves they see when they're around you. It's not your fault, but it becomes your problem if you let their fear slow you down. This is where Stoic insight becomes powerful. Marcus Aurelius, through a modern lens, reminds us, don't lower yourself to their pace. Walk your path in silence and let them catch up or fade away. That means don't argue, don't prove, and don't justify. You're not responsible for the pace of anyone else's growth. You're responsible for your own. Let them wrestle with their discomfort. Let them criticize. Let them stay behind if that's what they choose. But you keep walking. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Eric, decided to get serious about his health. He changed his eating habits, started going to the gym, and stopped wasting weekends partying. At first, his friends supported him, but as the months passed and he stayed consistent, their tone shifted. They joked about his new lifestyle. They started calling him boring. One even said, "You think you're better than us now." But Eric knew the truth. He wasn't judging them. He was just no longer joining them. And that difference? It made them uncomfortable. His discipline made their excuses feel louder. So they criticized him, not because of what he was doing, but because of what they weren't. So how do you handle this? First, don't take it personally. Their fear of being left behind isn't about you, it's about them. Second, don't slow down to make them feel comfortable. Growth isn't meant to make others feel safe, it's meant to move you forward. And finally, accept that some people won't come with you, and that's okay. At the end of the day, you don't owe anyone comfort at the cost of your own evolution. Walk your path boldly. If they catch up, great. If they fade away, let them. You weren't born to shrink for people who refuse to rise. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 3, they secretly doubt themselves. Let's talk about one of the quietest but most damaging reasons people criticize your goals. They secretly doubt themselves. These are the people who talk big but dream small. The ones who used to have ambition but buried it under excuses. When you show up with fire, with belief in yourself, with the courage to chase something meaningful, you don't just remind them of what they gave up. You expose it, and that exposure doesn't sit well. So instead of looking inward, they lash outward. Not because your goals are foolish, but because they've stopped believing in their own. Here's the truth. People who lack belief in their own potential often feel threatened by those who do. Your ambition holds up a mirror they're not ready to face. Every time you say, "I'm going for it," they hear, "You're still standing still." And instead of asking themselves why they stopped dreaming, they question why you still do. That's when the comments start. "That sounds risky. You think you're really cut out for that. Don't get your hopes up." But listen closely. They're not warning you about failure. They're telling you how they feel about themselves. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus said it perfectly. "He who has not conquered himself will resent the one who has." When someone hasn't done the work, hasn't built the discipline, the resilience, the belief, they don't understand how you did. And so, rather than get inspired, they get bitter. Not because of you, but because they feel left behind by their own unfulfilled potential. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Rachel, left her corporate job to start her own business. It was a bold move. She had no guarantees, just a vision and the courage to follow it. When she told her colleagues, some were supportive, but one in particular, a woman named Megan, immediately criticized the decision. "Do you really think that's smart in this economy? What if you fail? People dream big and go broke all the time." At first, Rachel was shaken, but then she realized something. Megan had once talked about starting her own company too. She just never took the leap. And seeing Rachel do what she hadn't, it stirred something inside, not admiration, but discomfort. So how do you handle people like this? First, recognize it's not about you. Their criticism is a reflection of their own fears, not your potential. Second, stay rooted in your purpose. Don't let someone's self-doubt become your limit. And third, lead by example. Show what's possible, not through arguments, but through action. At the end of the day, you can't shrink your vision to protect someone else's comfort. Let your belief in yourself shine, not to prove them wrong, but to remind yourself you were never wrong for believing. Let them doubt. You keep building. Number 4, your focus makes them uncomfortable. Let's talk about a subtle but powerful reason people suddenly start criticizing you: your focus. In a world where most people are constantly distracted, jumping from one thing to another, chasing comfort, noise, and endless scrolling, seeing someone with direction is jarring. When you show up with clarity, when your eyes are locked on a goal and your actions align with purpose, it disrupts something in them. It makes them uncomfortable. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your focus makes their chaos impossible to ignore. Here's the truth. Most people are busy being busy. They confuse motion with progress. They talk about dreams, but never take action. They start things they never finish. And when you show up with steady discipline, when you don't get pulled into drama or distraction, it reveals a truth they don't want to see: how much time they've wasted. Your clarity strips away their illusion. You become a mirror, and instead of letting your example wake them up, they criticize it. Why? Because it's easier to mock someone's focus than to admit you've been unfocused for years. This is where Stoic wisdom speaks loudest. Heraclitus, a philosopher often aligned with Stoic thought, said, "Clarity of purpose reveals the noise of the world." And he was right. When you get clear on who you are and what you want, you start to see through the clutter. You stop chasing attention, you stop needing approval, and you stop participating in distractions that once felt normal. But that kind of focus doesn't just change you, it makes others uneasy, because now they have to ask themselves, what am I even working toward? Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Josh, decided to simplify his life and lock in on one goal: getting into med school. He cut out social media, stopped going out every weekend, and built a schedule that made space for nothing but studying, health, and sleep. At first, his friends supported him, but after a while, the jokes started. "You're no fun anymore. All you do is study. You think that's going to make you happy?" But Josh wasn't bragging, he wasn't preaching, he was just focused. And that made the people around him, people who were drifting without purpose, feel exposed. His clarity revealed their noise. So how do you handle this? First, don't apologize for being focused. If someone's offended by your discipline, that's on them. Second, don't let their discomfort become your distraction. You're not here to explain your priorities. You're here to protect them. And third, keep showing up with quiet consistency. Your focus isn't just a path, it's a filter. The people who can't handle it will fall away. The ones who belong will rise with you. At the end of the day, you weren't born to blend in with distraction. You were made to walk with purpose. Let the world be noisy. You stay clear. You stay focused. And you keep building the life they said was too much. Because deep down, they wish they had your clarity. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a "thank God" and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 5. They're trying to project their limits onto you. Let's talk about a type of criticism that's less about you and more about what someone else believes is possible. Because sometimes, when you tell people about your goals, their first reaction isn't support or curiosity. It's doubt. But that doubt doesn't come from facts or logic or any deep understanding of your potential. No, what they're really doing is projecting their own limits onto you. They can't imagine themselves doing what you're aiming for, so they assume you can't either. Here's the truth. Their criticism is a reflection of their ceiling, not your potential. They've built a mental box around what's realistic, and anything outside of that feels threatening. Not because it's impossible, but because it reminds them that they stopped trying. So instead of expanding their thinking, they try to shrink yours. They tell you things like, "That's a long shot," or "Don't set yourself up for disappointment," or "Be more practical." But none of that is about you. That's their fear talking. That's their limitations disguised as advice. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes essential. Marcus Aurelius, in a paraphrased thought, reminds us, "Do not inherit the fears of others. Walk with your own courage." Because if you're not careful, you'll start internalizing someone else's insecurities. You'll begin to question your own vision just because they never dared to imagine something bigger. And that's the danger. Not their doubt, but the risk of adopting it as your own. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Natalie, decided she wanted to become a writer. She had no connections, no degree in literature, no formal training, just passion, discipline, and a vision. When she shared her dream with a few close people, one of them, a co-worker named Laura, laughed and said, "You know how many people try that and fail? It's cute, but don't quit your day job." Now here's what Natalie didn't know at the time. Laura had once written a book too, but she never submitted it, never finished it, gave up before she even tried. And Natalie's dream? It triggered that buried regret. Laura wasn't critiquing the odds, she was projecting her own story. So how do you respond? First, identify what's yours and what's not. Their fears, their failures, their limits. None of that belongs to you. Second, protect your mindset. Don't shrink your vision just because someone else couldn't see it for themselves. And third, keep moving forward. Let your results do the talking. Because the truth is, people who've never left the ground will always question your ability to fly. At the end of the day, you don't need permission to dream beyond someone else's limitations. You need belief, courage, and the discipline to prove that what's impossible for them was just unfamiliar to you. Let them keep their ceiling. You were built for the sky. Number 6. They want you to stay where they're comfortable. Let's talk about a kind of criticism that sounds like care, but comes from fear. You're doing something bold. You've set your sights higher. You're chasing a goal that requires change, growth, even distance. And suddenly, someone close to you starts questioning everything. Are you sure that's safe? What if it doesn't work? Why not just stick with what's working already? On the surface, it sounds like concern. But look closer, and you'll realize something deeper is going on. They don't want you to grow because they're afraid of what your growth might mean for them. Here's the truth. When people fear losing you, they often mask it as criticism. It's not really about your goal. It's not even about whether or not you'll succeed. It's about where that goal might take you, and how far it might pull you from them. If you become someone who wakes up early, works hard and stops wasting time, what happens to the friendship that was built around late nights, constant distractions, and staying comfortable? If you move forward, they worry they'll get left behind. And instead of admitting that fear, they disguise it as just looking out for you. This is where Stoic insight becomes essential. In a modern paraphrasing of Seneca's wisdom, a man's loyalty to comfort will disguise itself as concern for your safety. Let that sink in. Sometimes the people telling you to slow down aren't trying to protect you. They're trying to protect their connection to you. Your courage to change challenges their comfort. Your momentum threatens the rhythm they're used to. So instead of rising with you, they try to hold you where they feel safe. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Brian, decided to leave his hometown to pursue a new career in another state. He'd talked about it for years, and now the opportunity was real. But when he shared the news, his oldest friend Mike reacted with hesitation. "Man, are you sure it's worth leaving everything behind? Jobs come and go, but friendships like ours?" The words sounded emotional, even protective. But deep down, Brian knew what was really happening. Mike wasn't afraid for him. He was afraid for himself. Afraid of what Brian's departure would mean for their friendship. Afraid that he'd be stuck while Brian moved forward. So how do you handle this kind of criticism? First, recognize it for what it is. Emotional resistance, not practical advice. Second, respond with love, but stay rooted in your path. You can reassure someone without shrinking for them. And third, remember this. You are not responsible for keeping others comfortable at the cost of your own evolution. At the end of the day, the people who truly care about you will want you to grow, even if it scares them. They'll cheer for you, even if it means watching you walk a road they're not ready to follow. Let others stay where they feel safe if they choose, but don't let their fear become your cage. You weren't meant to stay small for someone else's comfort. You were meant to rise. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply. Number 7. They think if they can't do it, no one can. Let's talk about one of the most ego-driven forms of criticism, when someone attacks your belief in yourself simply because they've never had the courage to believe in their own. These are the people who live inside limits. They don't just doubt your vision, they doubt all vision. If they tried once and failed, they assume no one else can succeed. If they never had the nerve to start, they'll mock you for trying. In their world, possibility doesn't exist. So when you break patterns, when you move different, when you dare to dream, they take it as a personal insult. Not because you hurt them, but because you exposed a truth they've been running from, that they gave up too soon. Here's the truth. Some people only believe in limits. Not because life taught them that, because they decided it was safer to stop trying. And now, when they see you doing what they wouldn't, or couldn't, or didn't have the willpower to attempt, they feel exposed. They feel challenged. Your belief becomes the evidence that they were wrong about what's possible. And instead of facing that, they attack you. They say you're unrealistic. They say you'll regret it. They tell you to be careful. But what they really mean is be small, like me. This is where Stoic insight cuts through the noise. Epictetus, reimagined, reminds us, the weak deny what they have not tried. The wise learn by watching. People who are trapped in their own disbelief will always try to make your belief sound foolish. But wise minds observe. They're not threatened by someone else's courage, they're inspired by it. So the next time someone mocks your ambition or tears down your goal, don't get angry. Just ask yourself one question. Is this coming from someone who's walked the path? Or someone who's afraid to even take the first step? Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Emily, decided she wanted to become a professional chef. She had no culinary background, just passion and the drive to learn. When she shared her plan, one of her relatives laughed. Do you know how competitive that industry is? People train for years and still don't make it. You'll burn out. But Emily stayed quiet. And a year later, she got accepted into a respected culinary school. 2 years after that, she landed a spot in a Michelin-starred kitchen. That same relative, still talking about what can't be done, while Emily keeps doing it anyway. So how do you respond when someone says you can't? First, stop explaining. You don't owe anyone a defense of your dreams. Second, let their disbelief stay with them. Don't carry someone else's limits into your future. And third, keep walking. Every step you take is a quiet reminder that belief is more powerful than doubt. At the end of the day, the people who say no one can are really just saying, I couldn't. Let them sit in their excuses. You've got goals to chase and belief to prove right. Number 8, they're testing if you'll break. Let's talk about a form of criticism that isn't always loud, but it cuts deep. When people don't just question your goal, they test your spirit. They throw doubt your way, not because they've thought things through, but because they want to see what you'll do with the resistance. It's not really about the details of your plan. It's not about logic or advice. It's a quiet challenge. Let's see if you're actually built for this. And what they're really asking is this: will you abandon your goal the moment it's questioned, or will you keep moving without flinching? Here's the truth. Criticism is often a test, not of your strategy, but of your resilience. People know when you're serious. They feel the difference between a wish and a mission, and sometimes that intensity makes them uncomfortable. So they poke, they question, they warn. But it's not because they truly believe you can't do it. It's because they want to see if you believe you can. The moment you fold under doubt, they feel validated. But the moment you stay quiet and focused, they feel something else: respect. This is where Stoic insight becomes fuel. Marcus Aurelius said, The obstacle is not the enemy, the surrender to it is. Criticism isn't the real threat. It's how you respond to it that determines everything. If you internalize every opinion, every jab, every dismissive comment, you'll never build the muscle it takes to finish what you start. But if you stand still, calm, steady, unshaken, you show the world and yourself that your purpose is bigger than their noise. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Jason, wanted to open a gym in his small town. He was passionate about fitness, committed to helping others, and had a vision. But when he shared the idea, people laughed. "No one here is serious about health," they said. "You're going to lose money." At first, the negativity rattled him. But then he realized this wasn't about his plan. It was a test to see if he'd crumble or build. So he said nothing. He kept his head down, worked his day job, and spent his nights turning his plan into action. A year later, that gym opened. 2 years later, it was thriving. The same people who once doubted him, they now ask him for advice. So how do you handle these tests? First, recognize what's really happening. Their words are pressure, designed to measure your strength. Second, don't react. Respond with action. Silence, progress, and consistency are louder than any argument. And third, use it. Let every doubter become a reason you push harder, not slower. At the end of the day, their criticism is just a door. You can knock it down with emotion, or you can walk right through it with focus. Let them test you, let them doubt, then show them without saying a word that you were never going to break. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights.